Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Green Generation. We are diving into one meaningful conversation at a time to help you build a more sustainable world or make more sustainable moves that can help build the planet to be a greener and more beautiful place. So today we're diving into the world of veganism. And with me, I have Shweta Seetharaman, who is a banker who's passionate about being vegan and believes in a compassionate living. She's also navigated through social situations, and she's here to share her story, plus some myths, and maybe, just maybe, help you understand vegan. And maybe you'll get inspired, maybe not, but just share her journey and tell you what her experience with vegan or switching to vegan food is like. So I'm going to start with the very basics. What made you want to go vegan, or was there a specific moment, or was it just something that triggered wanting to be vegan?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. I love what you're doing here.
Thank you.
But you forgot the most important piece in my introduction.
What?
I'm your sister.
And she's my sister.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking about how this all started, honestly, it was like a happy accident. I remember recovering from, I'd had bilateral knee surgery, and I was working on my nutrition to tailor that to my fitness, my recovery plan. And I realized at some point that I hadn't had dairy in almost 2 weeks, in over 2 weeks actually. And so I started reintegrating the dairy back into, I was already vegetarian, I started reintegrating the dairy back into my diet. Because it felt completely normal for me to consume dairy at the time. And that was like my last link, I think, to animal products. And as that happened over a period of time, I realized that I was unconsciously, unintentionally choosing the dairy-free option every time I would eat. And that's when it kind of clicked, right? There wasn't like a single aha moment, but it was a slow process where I realized that I felt better when I chose a vegan option while eating. So it was a series of kind of intentional choices after that. That's when I started educating myself, learning more about veganism, learning more about how to understand how I feel, my body, and kind of choosing what I thought was best suiting my lifestyle. And yeah, since then, I think now I'm entirely vegan, and I have a lot of conviction in why I am choosing this lifestyle for myself. It's just, I feel like a better path for me. And once you read a little bit and educate yourself on, how the body responds to different food sources and nutrition sources, in addition to how you feel and reading your own body. And then obviously there's the animal cruelty, the ethical aspect of that, the environment aspect of that. So it's multifold, really. But at first, for me, honestly, started for selfish reasons. I just felt better.
Okay. And I think I know the answer to it because I just told you she's my sister. But how did your friends and family react to it?
I had a lot of mixed reviews, mixed reactions. I got, the classic, the cliche questions. Do you just eat grass now? Or how do you ever feel full? Where do you get your protein? Is your food tasty? Is it delicious? All of that. And I don't blame them, right? I think we're all conditioned to respond to food differently. Yeah. We're all conditioned to look at right and wrong differently. But the conversation and dialogue and education really helps bridge that misconception. And break away from certain sort of perceived default notions that either we've just heard from those around us, or we've been fed by certain industries because it's good for their business to propagate a type of movement or type of behavior. But I think over time, I've had an incredible support system. And so for me, over time, I realized that, my friends and family were more supportive when they learned how much better I felt and how much conviction I had in what I was doing. And it was a choice that, most importantly, I think it was a choice I made for myself. It wasn't something that I expect of anyone else. And it's not something that I impose on anyone else, but it's me doing this for myself because I believe that it's good for me. And while I think food is emotional and everyone should make their own choices for themselves, I do hope that more people are able to keep an open mind and learn more about why it makes sense and test it in little parts.
Yeah, and I think I would safely say from my experience is that I had transitioned out of not complete dairy, but milk very early on. I think even before you became vegan, for some reason, I started making almond milk at home. But when she transitioned into like cutting out mostly all of the dairy, you never imposed it on any of us. You just quietly made the choices. And I think that's sort of because those choices were made consciously and you were like extremely particular about how it made you feel. Maybe that made you like do it with a lot more conviction. We automatically started, me, my dad, and my mom, we automatically started making the same choices as you as well. So I'm more vegan at home. But yeah, so sometimes it can be as simple as just making the choices, do them because that's what you believe in. And it's not necessarily to inspire or to propagate, but I think that's great. But what is the one thing that's surprised you most about being vegan? Something you thought that wouldn't be, nutrition or how you felt?
I think what I realized in time, especially because my progress was in parts, I did it kind of gradually as I felt I was comfortable. I realized it's not as complicated as people make it out to be.
Yeah.
It's not this like life-changing choice that one is making. It's just small and measured choices that we make on a daily basis. There are plenty of alternatives available in the market. In fact, most of the traditional foods that we eat on a day-to-day basis can be made vegan very, very easily. It's just about rewiring, unlearning some of the things that we think are the way things need to be done, right? Breaking away from what we consider to be default or normal or, just like the rules that have been set for us by whoever, by society or industry or over time, because we have to understand that our ancestors also adapted to their environment in their food choices. Yeah. We have to adapt to our environment today.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's definitely not as complicated as it made out to be. It's just intentional choices over time. And when you unlearn and relearn, you kind of rewire your approach in your brain to how you look at food. It gets a lot easier. And then once you have a basic plan, it kind of becomes second nature.
Okay. And now we're diving into what you already mentioned as sort of a myth, in my opinion, and maybe hopefully this is busting the myth, but how do you get all your nutrients? That's a question you'd be asked, I'm sure.
I'm asked that all the time. I think the single most question that I get asked right now in a world where protein is what everyone is talking about is where do vegans get their protein? So just for the record, I work out. So protein is important to me too. And I try to eat twice my body weight in protein, and you know this. But my focus is both on macronutrients and micronutrients both. And when you focus not just on the big protein, carbs, fats, when you just move away from just those four major categories and also think about all the micronutrients that are essential to well-being, that's when you're focusing on sort of long-term sustainable, healthy living, right?
Yeah.
And all of our goals is to live long, live a healthy life, and live a good quality life. And so this really, I think, falls into that. If it's that piece of the puzzle. I was reading recently about how traditionally, especially in the fitness space, with the guidance that you typically get, there's so much information on social media.
Yeah.
The guidance that you get is, you need X amount of protein, X amount of carbs, X amount of fats. And what the focus is always single ingredient nutrition. So your protein comes from this ingredient on your plate, and your carbs come from this ingredient on your plate, fats from this one. When you are vegan or choosing a vegan lifestyle, you have to rewire how you think about this completely. So you don't look at single sources for your nutrition anymore. You look at a variety. So I focus a lot on the color of my plate, the diversity of ingredients on my plate. I focus on getting a variety of nutrients in every meal.
Yeah.
And that way I'm able to balance between the micro and the macronutrients. So I will also look at sources of iron, omega-3, calcium, and you know, veganism doesn't mean you're deficient in any of these, just for the record.
Yeah.
Right? You're nutrient sufficient across the board. If you eat well, and if you make the right choices, and if you're intentional about eating a variety and maintaining balance in your life.
No, and I think if you understand or know anything, or if you've heard enough about even gut health, they generally say a variety of vegetables, a variety of sources is always better than having one source.
Yeah.
Get all the colors on your plate is what generally gut health says.
Yeah.
You know, as many vegetables as possible, not the same type of vegetables. So in general, you're also sort of helping your gut, right? And that's good nutrition. That's better for how your body feels.
So of the 4 major macronutrient groups that often you'll hear about when you are thinking about your fitness goals, you hear about carbs, protein, fats, and the last one, very important, is fiber, right? And fiber is severely lacking in a primarily meat-focused diet, especially when you're thinking protein, up your protein. Often people forget about fiber, and that has additional complications or leads to additional complications, right? So it's very important to think about balance. I think the balance is key. Protein is very important, but so is the fat, so are the carbs, so is the fiber, right? And so it's just thinking about, and all the other micronutrients as well that often get forgotten, that then it's an interconnected, nutrition is complicated, and I'm not a nutritionist or a gut health expert, but the more we have balance in color, like we discussed, I think the more, the better we feel in general, and then the more sustainable our health remains over time.
No, I agree. And I think the more balanced your meal is, the more you don't cut out an entire food group, like doing no carbs. Like low carb is better than no carb in my opinion. Again, I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not propagating, but it's better for your skin, it's better for your hair, it's better generally for how your body feels, it's great for your gut. So having a balanced meal is definitely the way to go. Yeah. But is there, apart from how do you get your nutrients, is there any other myth that you've come across commonly that you'd want to sort of bust?
Yeah, I mean, just linked to what we discussed is that, you know, vegans don't get enough protein, or that, you know, if you don't drink milk, where do you get your calcium from? In fact, if you test most vegetarians or vegans, vegetarians drink milk, but vegans are calcium sufficient. Yeah. Because you get your calcium from a variety of different sources that are very easily bioavailable to you, but you cut out the animal hormones and all the other byproducts that you consume when you consume animal products. And on protein, frankly, this is the one thing I respond to. I get asked a lot. Protein is just a chain of amino acids, right? Yeah. And all amino acids come from plants.
Yeah.
Right? And so what I do is I go straight to the plant source instead of then consuming the animal or the animal byproduct that has consumed the plant source and then digested the amino acids and then consumed the protein in a concentrated form. Do I need to make sure that I'm more conscious eating, you know, protein sources in every meal? Yes, I do. But like I said, once you make it part of your lifestyle, it kind of becomes second nature. Yeah. And then you want to eat a well-balanced, your body will ask you for a well-balanced meal consistently and all the time. Beyond a point, it becomes less appealing to not have a well-balanced plate.
No, and for example, a myth that I think, and again, if you are a nutritionist, know better. If you are vegan, understand nutrition better, please feel free to comment. But for example, they say that vegetarians or vegans don't get enough first-class protein, they only get second-class protein. For example, like your lentils.
Right.
But a lot of people don't know, like you said, protein is a chain of amino acids. So the reason why they say the Indian dal chawal, right, lentil rice, the reason why you're supposed to eat them together is because there's 9 amino acids in the dal and there's 1 in the rice.
Yeah.
So having that balance, not taking out the carbs, then gives you a fully complete source of protein that a vegetarian and a vegan can very easily get. So just understanding nutrition, understanding the balance that you need to put together to get those 10 amino acids to get a full source of protein is very possible. So it's not necessary that, of course, if you do a no carb diet, then you will only get second class protein, for example. So it's not fully a myth, but I think people don't understand, like you said, rewire how you think about nutrition and then choose your meals, have a more balanced meal. I think that allows you to get a full protein source. And honestly, I haven't seen too many people who are vegan or vegetarian that are actually deficient in protein. I think it's very much a myth that you don't get enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even deficiency, right? It's just understanding that it's accessible to you.
Yeah.
So the complete or the incomplete sources is very much something that also gets talked about and thrown at vegans a lot. Yes, there's a lot of wisdom in some of our ancient traditional ways of cooking. So traditional combinations of foods help in that regard. But there are also complete sources of protein in the plant universe.
Yeah.
So, I know leucine is another chain amino acid that is talked about often. Leucine is available in plants. It's just about stepping back from what you've constantly been told needs to be done and just thinking about how you want to reshape your choices today. And think about it, the largest, the biggest, the strongest animals in the animal kingdom, some of them are herbivores, right? Whether it's your elephant, your rhino, your gorilla, they're all vegetarian or vegan, for the lack of a better term. And there are elite bodybuilders and athletes that are maintaining peak performance and still opting for a vegan lifestyle. So it's possible. It's just about whether you want to keep an open mind to it or not.
Absolutely. Okay, so how does, in your opinion, how do you think veganism also connects to climate change or sustainability for you, maybe in your daily life, or something that you come across that's where your food habits have encouraged sustainable choices?
That's a very poignant question, I think. Animal agriculture and dairy farming are one of the single largest contributors to emissions, to water consumption, to overfarming. Frankly, we think about the animal cruelty aspect of it, which is obviously a single major component of it when we think about the life cycle of animals. But there's also all the resources that we dedicate to animal agriculture and dairy farming. We don't often think about how much land and how much water is consumed in trying to grow the feed for the animals that then we consume as food. When there is such widespread inequality and lack of access to food for human beings, we dedicate that land and those very valuable resources to feed growth for the animals as well. So reducing first animal agriculture and dairy farming is maybe one of the single most impactful choices that we as individuals and as organizations can make for the planet.
Okay, and do you think there's anything else that's inspired, like you said, maybe you'd realize later, like making vegan choices almost made you make more sustainable choices in the future? We've understood the animal agriculture and why, that's also, a lot of people don't realize, right? Like they basically say, I've spoken about this in the previous podcast once, but they say the ozone layer is most depleted right above like slaughterhouses because they emit so much heat from the fear, etc., etc. There's a whole detailed explanation to it. So a lot of things that people don't understand about animal agriculture that you've just explained a little bit about, but any other choices that have almost become a byproduct sort of sustainable choices or veganism that you've made?
Look, I don't think about this. It's like a seismic change to my lifestyle personally. for me, it started off as a diet. And the more I learned about it, the more I educated myself, the more I started encouraging myself to think about it from also an ethical point of view.
Yeah.
The more I started feeling like I wanted to make more conscious lifestyle choices as well. I think I'm still very early on in my journey, and there's a long way to go. But I do think progress comes from small intentional changes we make on the daily. And progress doesn't have to be perfect, but it's still a step forward, even if you're not all the way. And that goalpost can keep shifting. So yeah, I just think I allowed myself. Granted, my trigger started off very differently.
Yeah.
But I then allowed myself to keep an open mind and to relearn some of the things that I were taught were super important for me. Right? Growing up, we were given a glass of milk to drink every day.
Yeah.
Now, when I think about it, it's terrible. I mean, for me, I would never do that for my children, right?
Right.
But that's something that I've educated myself on and then found conviction in. You can do the same for yourself, and everyone can do the same for themselves. And they can make their choices independently, but it's about keeping an open mind.
Yeah.
Right?
So one step at a time. Every little step, I'm sure, counts, and hopefully will also make you feel better internally. But
yeah, I mean, my big revelation was that for me, this change was an upgrade. It was not a compromise, right?
Yeah.
It was bettering my quality of life by making this choice, as opposed to cutting things out. I was just being better in the choices that I made. I was not giving anything up. That's how I thought about it.
No, and I sort of agree. So, I mean, I grew up, like she said, drinking a glass of milk every day. And then when you stop it, you might not necessarily realize how largely it's affected you. But then when you stop it for a couple of months and then you go have a glass of milk, you realize how much more bloated you feel.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's while you eliminate it and then you take it back is when you realize how much it changes the way you feel or how your digestion is affected. So sometimes it's not about making the choice and you see an instant change, but it's overall, how your digestive system feels.
And mind you,
one thing.
Neither of us is intolerant.
Yeah.
We're not. We've tested. We're not intolerant to dairy. But they do say that over a period of time, 70% of the adults develop a natural intolerance to dairy.
Yeah.
Because we're not baby cows, right? We're human beings. So it's not for us to consume another animal's milk, right?
Okay, and now is something that might have been, might be challenges that you face on a daily basis or when you travel or when you're eating out. So how do you manage to make the choices that work for you? Somewhere where you might not get enough of, the options that you'd like to eat.
Yeah.
It might limit you down. So then how do you make calculative choices?
Yeah, I'm still mastering this. I'll be honest, and it's easier or harder depending on where you are in the world. Some cities in the world are incredibly inclusive from a dietary point of view, so you won't have to think twice when you travel to certain cities. In the others, it's harder. I've traveled a lot this year, for example, and I know it's come with its fair share of challenges from a food point of view. So I do think it involves some level of planning ahead. Make sure you know where you're going, look at the menu before, decide what you want to eat, or pack a snack with you if you're traveling on a flight. Try and get creative. I get creative with sides at a restaurant because I happen to be, in the minority with my dietary choice amongst in my social circles. So I just get creative with sides at restaurants, so I'm not compromising on the social aspect of food either. But it is getting better and better, frankly. I think if more people understand how much the bounty that the plant-based diet does bring with it, it is getting better.
Okay, and just for everyone that's watching who might be curious or might want to make the shift but doesn't know where to start, what's one tip or advice that you'd like to give anyone who's curious about being vegan?
It's not a, I think I mentioned this earlier, it's not a sort of one day cold turkey. I almost recommend against that. I think it's progress in milestones and it's small changes to your lifestyle. you find conviction in what you're doing, and when you start believing in what you're doing, you will stop thinking about it as a compromise, right? It's something you want to do for yourself. So maybe you start with, I don't know, dairy substitutes, right?
Yeah.
Or you start with meatless Mondays, right? The cliche movements that we've all heard about. But there's so many ways for you to start incorporating these choices in your life on the daily, and over time, it'll become something you would prefer.
Yeah.
For yourself and for your well-being, for your body, for your family. Right?
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all of your valuable insights. And what we've understood, and at least I've understood, is that being vegan is, of course, it's a diet, but it's not just about making dietary changes. It's about thinking and feeling a certain way as well. So if this helped you on your journey, or if this created some curiosity, don't forget to keep following for more sustainable insights, and we will see you in the next one.